Hello, and welcome back to the Long Distance Love Bombs podcast. I am your host, Dr. Jeremy Goldberg. My guest today is Nikki Weaver. Who the heck is Nikki Weaver? You might be asking yourself, and it's a good question. I myself had no idea until I read an article by the poet Joy Sullivan, who was also on the podcast, and she referenced Nikki's work, and I was immediately intrigued because what Nikki does is she goes into maximum security women's prisons and she teaches writing and she teaches yoga and she teaches self-expression and does some somatic exercises. And I was like, that sounds like an interesting person. I want to talk to them. I've never talked to a person who teaches writing inside of a prison. I'm intrigued. I wonder what that's like. I have all the questions. And Nikki is wonderful. She made me cry a couple times, I think. I got some definite watery eyes going on in this conversation. And she opens up vulnerably and maturely and with great reverence for all of the work and all the humans that she encounters. This is a really good conversation. And I know I say that every time, and I know that I'm biased, but like, honestly, have you ever heard from a person that teaches writing and yoga inside of a prison? Can't you imagine that they have some wild stories to share? Yes, they do. And Nikki shares them in this conversation. And it's really impactful and it's really powerful. She runs an organization called On the Inside. You can check that out. She's on Instagram as well. I'll include links in the show notes to all of that stuff. But two notes that I have written down from our conversation. One is, what lies about myself do I need to let go of? That's a banger line. What lies about myself do I need to let go of? And then also, of course, can you speak your truth and survive it? This is a big one. This is a good one. Get Nikki Weaver's voice in your earbones right now and enjoy this conversation that I had with her. Let's go. Nikki
The
Weaver,
countdown.
we did it. We
We
counted down
did
from
it.
5. Here we are.
4. Yeah, here we are.
I'm,
Finally, I'm so glad to have this time with you. So,
yeah?
yeah, it's really
Why?
cool. Because you sent this lovely email about interest and work and or reading Joy's essay, and it sparked interest and curiosity. So that's a cool thread to follow.
Yeah. Yeah. Lately, for the last year or two, I would say I only reach out to people now where I feel this little hit of like, I want to
Mm,
talk to them. They seem
mm,
intrigued. I don't know why.
mm,
I want to reach out and only talk to people that I really want to talk to. And
mm,
I read about your work, which, from my recollection, is you go into women's prisons and teach creativity and movement and connection and healing.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, that's interesting. I don't know many people that do that.
Yeah.
And actually, why don't you describe what you do so that
Mm.
I don't completely botch it from minute
I
one?
I love it. Well, it started as a theater class, which is a big part of my background. In 2018 at Coffee Creek Correctional Facility, which is Oregon's only female prison, houses 2,200 women on a minimum and a maximum side. And I was working full time for a theater company that my husband and I started back in the day. And it sort of just grew and grew and grew. Um, and the nonprofit that I was collaborating with said, Nikki, you should do more of this work. We don't have the bandwidth. You should teach on the medium maximum side. And I sort of got curious. And the backstory really to sort of, I have no business to be in prison myself, but my mom worked in men's correctional facilities when I was a kid in California. And so I remember watching her do similar work. She taught literature and drama at Camp Holton, which is now a place in California where they basically do rehabilitative work with men and train them to be firefighters while they're serving time. So Anyway, that was sort of as I sat in this women's prison in 2018, I thought I would rather be inside more than I would like to be outside in the real world. And I remember leaving thinking, I'm going to do more of this. So that little 2018 class, we were co-directing a large Shakespeare play, Twelfth Night, and that one night turned into 6 months, and then that 6 months turned into what has now been 7 years of sort of making work. And really, so the theater class shifted into what I called a poetry class, and I am not a poet. I like to write, but really for my own interest, and I don't often share a ton of writing. But that class shifted into a poetry class, and I played this little experiment where I collected a ton of work from poets that were either alive or had passed. And what I was curious about was looking at why they were writing and what time period they were writing in and who were they talking to. And so every week, this class of 6 women at the prison would pick a poem and we would sort of pull it apart together, and then we do something that I call putting it on its feet, where we would take a stanza or take a line of text that resonated with your body, and you would find a way to move it with gesture or movement as you spoke your text. And then we would perform the poem in the order that it was written for each other in the room. And after that first class, I gave the women the homework to take the poem and see if they could find a way to embody the entire poem and bring it back the following week. And I gave them a poem called For Light by John O'Donohue. And if you're listening and you've never read it, stop what you're doing and go find it. But it's probably about 2 pages long. And I didn't know what would happen. But when I came back the following week, the women set up this circle of chairs and one by one stood in the center of the circle, and they could embody the entire poem. And they were each able to speak this poem. And for me, that was sort of the beginning of wow, give people language and they can be transported anywhere. And suddenly, this sort of room without windows that I was sitting in with 6 women, I was outside of prison. So that class grew from 6 to sort of 30 women in the course of a few months, and the women started sharing their own stories and writing their own poetry. And we did a performance for women inside and then also for family and friends on the outside. And this was getting close to 2020 prior to our big pandemic. But I had a woman who was serving life, and her family came to the show that we did for family and friends. And the family said, I don't know what you're doing in the room, Nikki, but whatever you're doing, you need to do more of it. And so I left sort of that class and came home and said to my husband, shit, I think I have to start another nonprofit. Ah. And so this was right before the pandemic. I quit my job at the art theater company and started figuring out how to start another nonprofit. So your question really, Jeremy, was like, what is the work and what do you do? And it began as theater, then it shifted to poetry, and then the pandemic like blew it up into something that I didn't imagine, which was trying to figure out how do you connect with your client online, and especially when you're working in a prison, and then it became multiple prison facilities. You don't actually have access to your client. There's no phone calls, texts, emails. And so there's something freeing about that. And that when you get to be in the room, presence is all you got. And when you are not in the room, you are relying on caseworkers, lieutenants, to help get your message to them, which fails and fails and fails and fails. And so the theater class really shifted to almost a pen pal situation where we would hand in newsletters with certain themes or topics, and the women would snail mail us letters to our theater company. And so we started writing back and forth in that kind of format. And then we sort of built a class structure that is something now we teach in 7 US states and 1 Australian state. And so we work all with women and then also with youth that are serving time. we teach a bunch of things at this point, an 8-week creative series, which we believe creativity brings healing. And so we are not drama therapists or art therapists, but we work sort of in that format with DBT skills and EBT. We teach a trauma-informed yoga class in person, and then we teach a trauma-informed movement class that our friend is leading, who's getting her master's in psychology. So it's a part lecture, part boot camp, I would call it. And then we're building a program for moms and children. So moms that are incarcerated with children on the outside. And then trying to also look at, can we build a sort of second bridge to that program for moms as they're released, to repair and rebuild those relationships as they're navigating life on the outside. So that's a little answer
Yeah,
to the big
just that.
question.
That's all you're doing?
That's it. Mostly I'm sitting on my butt.
Yeah. Jeez. Okay. You're pretty busy.
Actually, just today, I didn't even mention this. I'm like, "Bloop." Just today we started a 200-hour yoga teacher training certification for women that are being released from prison because the yoga work has been so transformative in person. We're trying to get it going in the prison that we work in here in Oregon in person for women that are serving time, so that when they're released, they're certified to teach everywhere. But it's been a slow process. So we thought, well, let's just start it virtually. So we have a woman in Wyoming and a woman in Oregon that are released from prison and were our students when they were inside, that are part of this new model that we're testing out. So that was
Wow.
my morning.
I have so many questions and I don't know where to start.
Which thread? Which thread will
Yeah.
we follow?
Yeah. I guess the the initial sort of thought that I had in hearing your origin story was, wow, what a peculiar family business to get into of your,
Hmm.
I think it was your mom that was
Yeah.
teaching literature in a prison, and now you go into prisons and teach writing. Like my
Hmm.
family, for example, owns a tire shop, and my dad runs my grandpa's tire shop. And
Awesome.
I was like, wow, that's so neat that you're doing similar work and that you were immersed in it from your early upbringing.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
okay, so setting that aside, because that's not even a question.
Hmm.
One question I had was, how has doing all of this work changed you?
Mm. It's made theater and art making make sense in a way where I think I was really burnt out making theater in black boxes. Now I make art inside concrete walls with no windows and no natural light. So in some ways it's very similar, and in some ways the impact that occurs in the room, um, I can see immediately, which is hard to see sometimes in theater, whether you're on stage or directing or teaching. But what I believe about prison is that I'm meeting people that are sitting at the bottom. And so there's something interesting to me about when you meet people that are sitting at their bottom edge, that there's nowhere else to go but up. And so it's a really raw and vulnerable place, an embarrassing and shameful place to be sitting, living, and trying to survive. Um, and what has changed me is being witness to that and learning how I might serve, helping someone and supporting a lift or an elevation. Um, and that the power of story really is prominent, I think, in what I'm teaching or trying to offer, the reminder that we can change our story. And it's really common to get stuck, for myself included, in looping or believing that change is not possible. I can see in an instant if somebody turns the light on, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, I've often talked about the idea that it's all content,
Hmm.
right? Like as a writer, as a creator, it's all content, and your life
Hmm.
experiences are rich in material that you can alchemize or transmute or craft, create. And it seems like anybody that's in those facilities has a treasure trove of raw experiences that they've lived through to end up in a place like that.
Hmm.
That's perhaps an oversimplification, but do you know what I mean?
No, yeah, I think you're on the money. And yesterday was a prime example. I was walking into facility and I saw a family reunion occurring, and there were sort of 15 people and one woman who was getting out, and I could tell because of by the way she was dressed, and there were tears and screams and flowers and balloons and
Hmm.
signs. And when I went through the couple of gates, I asked the lieutenant on duty, I said, "What's her story?" And he said, "Nikki, she's been here 17 years. She's getting out, and her son was 10 months old when she walked through these gates. And he was standing outside as a 17-year-old." Jeremy, it was like I didn't even know her. And all day I left thinking about what does that feel like to have spent 17 years behind bars and then to meet your family. It's a huge gap. And what does somebody have to do to live behind bars for such a long time? So
Yeah, that did something to my eyeballs there.
mine too.
Yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
thinking about how much they're missing. Like we
Hmm.
talked before we started recording, we each have children, and I have an 11-month-old. And so the
Hmm.
idea of going away and missing their upbringing is just
Hmm.
so sad.
Yeah.
And so much material, I suppose, when you talk about poetry or creativity. It's like,
Hmm.
what are you going to do with that sadness? What are you going to do with that grief and that pain?
Hmm.
Right? And how can
Hmm.
you utilize it? I suspect is one avenue that you would support people
Hmm.
through.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my coworker, who's my co-executive director, we met while she was serving time, and children on the outside. And when she got out, so much of her life has been figuring out how to repair that relationship with her children. And she often reminds me that just because you're behind bars doesn't mean your parenting journey stops. You have to learn how to parent behind bars. And that is a really challenging thing to come up against. Uh, and how
It's
do
hard,
you do that when you're released?
it's hard enough to parent without being in jail, from my
I know.
experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my
She has this
goodness.
beautiful thing where she said every time her daughter would come to visit her and her daughter would say, why are you here? She would say, "I'm in mommy school and I'm learning how to become a better parent." And her point, right, in this, Jeremy, was that there are two ways you do time. You waste your time. And I mean, we're all doing this, I believe, in life. You waste your time or you do something with your time. And when we co-teach together, she often offers that choice in the room to our students. You can change who you are and your behaviors and your decisions, and you can do something, or you can not change and stay the same. But when you walk out these gates, the hope is that you've done your own work to repair, to heal, to transform, and that you are open to change. But most of my team are mothers that work with me, and half of them were behind bars and either lost their children to family members, suicide, or the foster care system. And so this idea of us building this new program is really because of their own needs that they've expressed in what is offered and shared, and what is taken away.
What have you learned about the people that are incarcerated? So, as an example, I view homelessness differently than I used to after learning about it and reading about the sexual abuse and the domestic violence that a disproportionate amount of homeless people experienced as a child, right?
Hmm.
Like, oh, they're not just bad criminal drug addicts, to speak very bluntly, right? A lot of
Hmm.
people
Hmm.
portray them as that. And I think
Hmm.
there's a lot of um, astigmatism, so to speak.
Hmm.
Is that
Hmm.
not just like your eyeball, but like a stigma? That's
Yep.
a stigma that comes when you think about jail or prison or criminals or people behind
Hmm.
bars. It's like they're bad
Hmm.
people. They did bad things. They should go away. And I don't know what, but what is what is meeting so many of those individuals taught you? What do you wish the world knew about these people? Are there wisdom or lessons to share from that? Do you know what I'm getting
Yeah,
at?
yeah, I do. I do. And I think the first thing that comes to mind is that we all make mistakes, right? It's human nature. And maybe I didn't murder somebody, but I've felt close to wanting to murder somebody when I've been really angry. And I believe that we all deserve healing and we all deserve to find forgiveness. And sometimes someone on the other end can't meet you with forgiveness, but you can learn to forgive yourself. That's the first part. Part two, I think a lot about we are not what we have done, but we are who we are in the moment. And in that moment, anything can change and anything is possible. The other thing I often think about, and sometimes this helps people like really understand, if your next door neighbor was somebody that had committed a heinous crime and you didn't know it, you might have a totally different interaction with them. But if you learned from the newspaper or the news tonight that your next door neighbor had done horrible things to children, wouldn't you want them to have done the work to heal, to change, to transform, whether it was therapy or hypnosis or whatever it was, that they had done the work to become somebody better, somebody different? And that's what I think. We are all living in a society where our neighbors have intentionally or unintentionally hurt other people. And the work that we have to do, I believe, is to look towards how do we heal. And so I think about that every day when I walk in the room. I'm not interested in what people have done to get there, but I'm interested in who they're learning to be.
Mm, it's so well said. I
Hmm.
think too in our society, it seems like forgiveness and grace and compassion, which is a core tenet of my own work. It seems like
Hmm.
there's not ample space provided for people to be forgiven for the things that they did when they were a different person, right? And
Yeah.
I think when you speak about that of our neighbor, but also ourselves, and we all
Yeah.
carry shame and guilt and regret around, it's just perhaps not to the extreme as some of those others. Um,
Hmm.
and,
Hmm.
and yeah, how do you, I guess the question in there is, how do you help to promote a culture of forgiveness for self or other
Mm.
when you're
Mm.
immersed in people who are in desperate need of it or might not know that they need it?
Yeah. Um, I really work to foster, I believe, a sense of community and connection from the moment I walk in the door. And that starts with the lieutenant that opens the gate for me. I learn his name so that I can call him by his first name every time I see him. I make sure to thank him. I give him a card every now and then. I ask him how his kids are. So I'm building connection. And now when I arrive, Jeremy, he opens all of the doors before I even touch them. He comes into class for yoga and talks to me as I'm setting up mats. That's one part of it. I mean, part two is also it
Can
goes
I just
further
stop
with
you real
the
quick? Sorry.
yeah.
For those listening, like myself, who might not be fluent in prison lexicon or protocol, when you talk
Yeah.
about the lieutenant opening the gates, in my head, I'm thinking, oh, there's like the guard who
Hmm.
lets you in and out and clicks the button and all the cell doors open in and out
Yep.
and has the baton and is keeping an eye on things. Is that right?
Uh-huh. Yeah, pretty much, and I'm not fluent in prison lingo, even though I work there. There is, before I walk through the gate, there's one woman that they sit in what's called the bubble, and it's behind a glass sort of chamber in the center sort of the building. And they have cameras to every corner of that building possible, and they control access to all gates, doors, opening and closing. So when I arrive, I walk through two gates before I get to the building. When I get to the building, there's another buzzer, and the same person controls that buzzer. Um, so over the years that I've been there, now when I see the gate, they buzz it open before I touch it. Um, the woman in the bubble that's usually there when I arrive, I ask her to get the lieutenant to open certain doors for me to access yoga mats and classrooms. And he is the one that now, before I even arrive, she says, "Oh, he's done it for you already. They're already open." So that is sort of what I think about, that the community and connection. I'm not just building it with the women, but I'm trying to build it with all of the staff that I'm interacting with daily. But with the women, the way I try and build it is I don't ask them about their crimes. I don't ask Jeremy why they're there, what they've done, what they're paying for. I always start with a question on the board. The other day it was something that you would like to touch. This past week it was something you find beautiful. And a big thing in a lot of the prison facilities we work in is women are not identified by their names. They're identified often by a number or their last name. And so we start with say your name or your nickname, whatever you want to be called today, and then answer the question or the prompt. And then to pass it, they have to call on somebody else's name. So that before we've even started a yoga class, everybody's name has been said in the room. And the same thing happens at the end of class. They share something they've gotten from the hour or two together, and they call on somebody's name. So they may have never heard each other's names or nicknames, but they certainly know them by the time they walk out of my room. So I believe that starts to build rapport really, really quickly. Um, there's a woman that comes into class. She was there yesterday, and she comes in late every week because she runs to Medline, gulps down her pills, and then runs into yoga. And so there's this rapport we have, whether she's had her meds or not, but it's welcomed in who she is and how she shows up rather than judged. Those are a couple things that like come up in terms of, I think, how I'm trying to build that level of, yeah, care.
And then you're building that level of care and connection to lead to blank. Like, what would be an end goal or a vision? Or so, for example, I
Yeah.
mentioned forgiveness. Is that
Hmm.
a North
Yeah.
Star, or do you have a North Star that you're like, yeah, this is a cute poem, but like we gotta work this over towards blank? Or
Yeah. I would say forgiveness, possibility, change, um, agency, choice. I think those are words that come up for me. Yeah,
all the good stuff.
all the good stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
hard working in a system where a lot of choice and agency has been stripped. And so the name thing is a really easy thing to sort of latch on to, and as an example. But often, a lot of what I hear is you actually care, you actually learn our names, you actually remember our kids, you actually ask us about our relationships. You're not here pushing an agenda, you're here to actually learn about who we are. And I think that that is missing in a lot of work that I see happening, especially inside prison facilities, that people are too interested in their own ego or agenda and are driving a point across rather than listening to who's in the room.
How do you listen to who's in the room effectively? What's your secret?
Uh,
What's the secret
I got
sauce to
no,
being
I
a?
got no secrets.
You've got to
um,
have some sauces by now.
it's that's a great question, Jeremy. I come back to that quote. I wish I could remember who said it, that we have to listen with a desire to be changed. So I try and stay open. I take a ton of notes when I'm teaching. I write people's names down. I write the day they're walking to the gate down. I write their birthday or their mother's birthday down. Um, Before I get out of the car, I circle back to the last 2 weeks of notes so I can try and remember what people have said or shared. Um, so I'm trying to be, yeah, my own person to sort of help me be accountable when I show up in the room.
And also you're like you care. It sounds like you
Care.
genuinely care.
I do. I
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
Perhaps that's
Yeah.
the simple secret sauce for all of this. It's just, you know,
Yeah.
I'm trying to also put myself in that place. And when you talked about agency and choice, I remembered that from my understanding, these individuals don't have that. It's like they're told where to go, they're told when to go, they're given what to eat. It's
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
do this now, do that now. Now it's time for
Yeah.
this, and there's structure and discipline, perhaps is another word, but
Hmm.
there's not necessarily, what would you like to do today?
Yeah,
When would you like to
totally.
go to yoga? Right?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Which
and
I think that to have the choice to be called your name or your nickname, to have somebody remember it, to be asked, is there a pose or a part of the body you do want to work on or you don't want to work on today? Farting is welcome, so is burping, to have a place where all of that is accepted and laughed at, with love rather than judged. I wear this clown nose.
so she,
I
for those
some
listening, she has a literal foamy clown nose on her face right now.
I carry this in my pocket, Jeremy, every time I walk in and out of prison. And sometimes I take it out and wear it as I walk down the halls or when I'm teaching. But sometimes it's just my reminder that play can exist in a place where there is a lot of fluorescent lighting and bars, because I think that allows other people to also find moments of play and ease in their day.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, and you
yeah,
give people permission to be silly or to see the silver lining perhaps right in front of them.
yeah. And prison is so weird. I often believe that presence is a practice, and many of the people I'm working with do not want to be present for where they are. They would much rather wait, disassociate, disconnect, and find presence when they're living on the outside. So I think it's a daring and risky place to try and be present with your feelings or your emotions or whatever experience you're having that day. But if we can find moments of clown, laughter, farting, burping, mm, there's some ease that happens in the room too.
I miss I'm reminded of that Robin Williams movie where he's a silly doctor in the hospital. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No,
He oh,
I can
God,
only
what's
think of Mrs. Doubtfire now when I think of
it's
Robin
not that
Williams.
one. There I know. There's another one where he Patch Adams, I think it's called, where he is
Okay.
a doctor and he's in a hospital. And I think there's a lot of similarities between a patient in a hospital that can't leave, that is,
Hmm.
eat this
Hmm.
or we're going to take your blood now, etc. But he
Hmm.
plays this goofy, silly Robin Williams-esque character who injects levity and lightness and silliness and playfulness in these areas or these spaces where it's an endangered species of sorts. And it sounds
Hmm.
like that's
Hmm.
what you're attempting to do as well, is shine some light in the darkness by reminding people that, hey, I know that it's really difficult at times to be silly or to have fun
Yeah.
or to
Hmm.
see the light, but hey, I'm
Hmm.
here to remind you to do that.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely.
I've heard it talked about in terms of meditation as well. Of yeah, it's easy to go to a retreat in Bali and meditate on your little cushion with your pina
Hmm.
colada, but
Hmm.
go to a traffic jam or the middle of a train station and try to be present and calm and regulated. Like that's the
Hmm.
actual where the rubber meets the
Hmm.
road. And it
Yeah,
sounds like you're doing the same in some sense.
trying to, trying to. Yeah,
Yeah, but
it's
it's a practice, right?
totally. It's a practice, and it's funny. Like years of yoga or running or theater teach has taught me about, like, yes, flexibility, adaptability, but there is no place like prison where you do adapt quicker than any fly, or you just can't work there. You just can't because there are so many doors that are closed, or people that forgot you had a class, or administrators that have programmed something else that day, so no one is around. Um, it's a very frustrating place, and it has taught me a great deal about patience or trying again, starting over. So, yeah.
Yeah. Can you speak a little bit more about that, like the logistic side of, because I imagine someone listening right now and they're thinking, this is awesome. I want to go teach a yoga class in a prison.
Yeah.
I'll just show up and knock on the door, or like, what's the process to get
Yeah.
vetted and get approved and get funded? And How's that work?
It's maddening. And if you're gonna do it, train like you're training for an ultra marathon, because that is the stamina you need. Uh, when I first started in 2018, I was really going in with the other nonprofit. So I was a scheduled volunteer. I had to go in with a permission slip held by somebody else and a little like dog tag on my shirt. And when I started working on the other side, it was first as a performance piece. And I said to the caseworker, I'll start teaching here. And she laughed in my face and said, no, you won't. It takes at least 6 months before you would ever get a badge. And I said, I'm going to start tonight. And I went home and I started doing the paperwork that night. And she was right. It took 6 months before I had some stamps on pieces of papers. And then I had to go in and do fingerprinting and a tour of the facility and more photographs for badges. But it worked. But it took 6 months. And now we work in so many different states. One state, Nebraska Correctional Center for Women, we were not allowed to teach there in person unless we went on a separate tour of the facility. So two of us flew to Nebraska just to tour a prison, and then we flew home. And then a few weeks later, we flew back and we taught in that prison. So just ridiculous kind of pieces of paperwork like that. A lot of facilities we've taught virtually and weekly, just like this sort of setting. And then when we visit, we are chaperoned by a lieutenant or a caseworker because we don't live within the state. We're not badged to be able to teach in those facilities. So I would say anyone like listening that's like, I want to teach art or yoga, prepare to jump through lots of hoops and then look for the person that might be your light that's working inside. And a lot of times those people are your education directors or your caseworkers that have been there for a long time or a program director. And try and get them on the phone and tell them about who you are and what you do and what you can offer. And then maybe, maybe they'll let you inside. But my experience is there's a lot of people with a lot of ideas, but then the commitment to follow through and to be reliable and to continue to show up is a longer string. And so much of what women living in prison need is someone that's going to be reliable and show up with some sort of consistency. So that's where I think your word and honoring your word become really, really important to how you show up in the room.
Yeah. How do you view the students in your classes that you work with? Uh, for example, hypothetically, I think it's quite easy to call in sick if you're working at Costco, and
Mm-hmm,
perhaps more difficult to call in sick if you're a pilot of an airplane,
mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm.
Sweeping
Yeah.
generalizations. But for you, it sounds like, hey, it's not just a yoga class. Like, these people need me. I care about them. They
Mm-hmm,
need support. They need reliability, consistency.
mm-hmm.
How do you think about that, and how does that affect your life?
Um, yes to all of those things. And we are such a small staff. We're a team of 6 and we tag team. So if I'm out, my hope is that one of my coworkers can cover my classes. But currently, right now, this is a great example. I was out for a month and nobody on my team teaches yoga. And so leading up to me being away for 4 weeks in a row, I was super nervous to tell my students. And then I did a ton of work to sort of set them up with 4 different yoga flows, worksheets, journals, so that they knew ahead of time I was going to be out for 4 weeks. And then I gave them a ton of homework to prep. But I was nervous the day I came back because I thought, man, I haven't been here for a month. Is anybody going to show up? And when I pulled the call out of the call out is sort of like your attendance sheet. Instead of 20 students, there were 40 women's names on the list. And I thought, oh shit, 40 of us are not going to fit in that room. So it's been really cool in terms of coming back to the work. Their honesty was like, we didn't do any of your homework, Nikki. We barely did yoga, but we did talk about it. And we're glad you're back.
Yeah. I feel like we got to get your staff trained up as yoga teachers.
I know. Yeah, my staff are like, why are you just training the recent prison releases? Why aren't you training all of us? So it's where time and priorities come into play, and all of us have children that we're chasing or driving like Uber drivers around. So I
And
think
based on what
it's,
you said at the start, you got a few things on your plate. Couple of
yeah,
you just
yeah.
maybe you should start a new nonprofit. Have you thought of that, Nikki?
I'm gonna ask you to start it actually, Jeremy, and then let me know when it's up and running, and I'll come work for you.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just thinking, like, I know a lot of yoga teachers out there, and I know a lot of things about that industry, and it seems like surely there's a way that somebody out there would give a free, spot in their yoga teacher training to someone like your staff that is doing such great work. Like, it's got it's got to exist, right? Like, if you're listening right now, find Nikki online and teach her staff and tell me about these resources. Like, that has to exist, right? Am
Yeah,
I?
and I'm sure it does. It's like, would they or will they carve out the time? Because I mean, even right now, we're doing the virtual one, right? So they could
Yeah.
participate virtually, but they're teaching other classes for us. But my hope is that on the inside, we'll bump out a bunch of formerly incarcerated yoga teachers
Oh,
that will be brave enough to share their stories, and that they will all begin to teach inside at prison facilities, but also in studios. So that was a little bit of what we were talking about this morning of, is sharing your story that you are a former inmate a good way to open a class? Or does that turn people the other direction and send people into a place of judgment if you're there to learn from them?
what's your
Yeah.
take?
I think it's a brave place to begin. Um, but I don't have the story of incarceration. So what I was saying to the women this morning is, I said, I imagine if I was doing time and you showed up to teach me, I would be so much more interested to learn from you because you had had my experience than I would be to learn from Nikki over here. So I
Yeah.
encourage it. I think it removes the scarlet letter from it having to be something that is filled with shame, and it can move you forward into a place of, I learned a lot, I did my time, I did my service, and now here I am. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's just something that's so empowering to encounter a person that can say to you, "Hey, I was where you were once.
Hmm.
Like, I did that too. I've been there,
Hmm.
and now
Hmm.
I'm here, and look who I am now. And I
Yeah.
know one route to get from there to here, and I would love
Hmm.
to tell you everything I know." It's
Hmm.
like,
And that is my colleague Jeremy Caroline, who's my co-executive director. I can talk a lot, but as soon as she shares her story and the life she's built since being released, I watch the whole room lean forward.
it's like,
And if they weren't going to attend class before, they're certainly coming to
mm,
every single class now. And like that
yeah,
is a big part of our work. Of my belief is, like, I want to relinquish leadership. I want more women that as they are released to be leading this work, and I can assist in training facilitators. But I think the work is much more powerful when it comes from women that have lived experience of the system, showing up and saying, yeah, I hated being where you were, but I'm back because this was powerful to me when I was there. So
yeah,
that's the goal or the hope. Yeah.
yeah. I've talked to coaching clients through the years who are feeling like they lack the credentials or the academic qualifications to teach or speak about blank,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
they've lived it. And I've
Hmm.
said to them, hey, would you rather hear me, this PhD science dork, say I studied depression for 5 years and I've read all the papers and I've written all the
Hmm.
papers and I know about it, but I've never
Hmm.
had it, right? Would
Hmm.
you rather hear me talk to you about depression or Johnny Two Shoes over here that experienced depression for 10 years and is now the happiest person you'll ever meet? It's like, I want to listen to Johnny Two Shoes. Like,
Yeah.
that guy
Yeah.
seems to know what he's talking about, right?
Hmm.
And I think
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
it's easy from my experience to talk yourself out of your own ability or to talk yourself out of your own qualification or credentials
Mhm.
because
Yep.
you don't have X, Y, or Z. Um,
Yeah. Yep.
yeah.
I agree. I agree. I have a lot of students that say, "I've never been a professional anything. How could I do this work?"
Mm,
To your point, I'm like, I think sometimes there's more to be said about the life you've led or the experiences you've had, um, than a piece of paper that's maybe handed to you from a university.
yeah. Yeah. I've got all of those pieces of paper. And I still deal with imposter syndrome and
Yeah.
all of the things that come
Hmm.
with confidence and fear. Um,
Me too.
Oh. Yeah. Thank goodness. How boring
Yeah.
would we be if we were enlightened?
Yeah.
Um, I
It's
had a
true.
question or
No questions.
and yeah, yeah. Let's just sit in the light of silence for the next 20 minutes. Uh, I'm curious if you could speak about the body and
Mm,
the somatic experience of healing and creativity and connection, because I've read your website and some of what you
mm,
do, and it seems like you've mentioned this earlier too of a line in a poem that your body responds to, or how you're
mhm,
feeling, and all of these kinds of things. Can you speak to some
mhm.
of that? How you think about it, how you work through it?
Yeah, I'll speak about it just from my own personal experience, because I do think it's really changed my life. I moved from LA when I was 10 years old because my mom died really suddenly. And my dad had left when I was a kid, and my dad arrived from Australia the day she died. And I left the country 10 days later with two duffel bags and moved to Sydney, Australia. And I didn't have siblings. He was the only person I knew in the country. And I really stopped speaking for quite a while. And I had a whole string of eating disorders where I stopped eating. Anorexia was part of it, bulimia became a bigger part of it. And I sort of fell into running. I had a friend that I met in seventh grade that was an amazing shot put thrower and said, "Do this little thing with me, little athletics." And so I started running kind of by accident, Jeremy, really for something to do. And I had never done it before, but what I learned pretty quickly was that when I was running, I didn't have to talk to anybody about who I was, why I was in Australia. Nobody knew I was American because I didn't talk. But what I started to understand from running was that I could feel things in my body and I could experience them without having to share them out loud. And so there was something in running that became really safe for me and something that I wanted to do more and more. And so I did a lot of running starting at 10, 11 years old. Um, and around that time is when I started to get interested in theater, and I would watch a lot of theater. There was a lot of theater happening at our school. I started studying theater. And then I realized through theater that I could have these large emotional experiences. I could fall in love, I could kill someone, I could scream, and I could survive. And that was exciting because it wasn't my story, it was somebody else's. But I got to play out a lot of, I think, what was happening for me without having to, again, explain or share. And then in 2005, I went to Shakespeare and Company, a theater company on the East Coast, and I thought as I finished college that I was going there to learn how to be a really wonderful actor and, be famous. And what I really found while I was there was that actually they taught me about how to find my voice. And I credit them for helping me come back to my voice in a way that was really embodied. A lot of the Kristen Linklater work, which looks at releasing the voice from the bowels of your being and then standing on your feet and being able to share your story with an audience. So there was something in that. And I just remember standing up one day thinking, wow, I can speak my truth and I can survive it. And I will forever try and do that in the rest of my life. Um, so that was really sort of the big moment for me of connecting the voice back to my body after it had been removed. But it took me a really long time to find my voice and feel like I was comfortable speaking, sharing aloud, telling any parts of my story. I was much more comfortable telling other people's stories. And that is something that I feel like I've done a lot of work in the last 10 years of like who gets to tell whose story, and when is it necessary to share more of me, and when is it important to shut up and listen to other people. And really, then yoga sort of came along for me right around that same time as I was at Shakespeare and Company. I hadn't practiced a ton of yoga, started practicing more yoga. First, it was the physical experience. Second, it became like, oh, I'm having an emotional experience. And third, the mental shift that I started to notice was that I could speak about what was happening to my body, and make eye contact with people. And that became something that eventually started to feel more and more safe. So that's sort of my experience with the beginnings of remembering what is the soma connection to the body.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
I thought you would talk about what you teach, and you went back to childhood.
Nope. I
Yeah,
went
I was
back
like,
to the childhood. But that's probably why I teach it, right, Jeremy? And I often say to people, my friend Julie, who's a really wonderful therapist, we often sit side by side, and um, I say I love her work, and talk therapy was not for me. I spent a lot of time with talk therapists, and that was not my way forward. Mine was always movement. And
oh,
so it's awesome because we have this opposite way of how do you inhabit your body. And she sits with, many clients that sort of talk therapy is the way forward. And for me, it was always I had to move before I could speak. And that's something that I think is really interesting, and that there's different ways we come to heal, or to move through trauma. And for me, it's always been connected to movement.
my partner is the exact same as you. She's
Yeah,
like a runner,
yeah,
a mover, a worker
uh-huh,
outer.
uh-huh.
Uh, she'll say things like, "I need to go for a run and have a good cry," and
I
I
need to do that with her.
please, you're welcome up here anytime,
Okay.
please, because I do not. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand, or she
Yeah.
views it very much through the lens of exactly what you've described there, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
the opposite. There's a puzzle in my mind, and if I can just think enough and put the pieces together and
You'll
unlock
get
this and
it.
unlock that, then I'll figure it
Yeah.
out. And so
Mm-hmm.
we see the world very differently, which is
Mm-hmm.
a real blessing and a real treat. But
Mm-hmm.
as you
I hear
suggest,
you.
it's different flavors for different
Yeah.
folks, and also at different points in your life, which I think is
Mm-hmm.
why it's so vital to have a large toolkit, or at least
Mm-hmm.
exposure to these various options that, hey, I used to hate that, but now I'm going to give it a try again. And whoa, lo and behold, yoga's pretty
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I
Yeah. What
remember
you
the
speak to
first,
is my husband. Yeah. Go
oh,
ahead.
yeah. I was going to say the very first yoga class I went to was in college. And my ex girlfriend at the time had wanted me to do yoga and was such a big fan of yoga and wonderful. And we walked in and I sat on the little mat, the back of the room. And this like Barbie goddess walks to the front of the room to teach the yoga class. And she like looked at me and was like, they don't all look like this. And I was like, yoga's pretty cool. And it did the class, this beautiful, very attractive woman, but I didn't like yoga. I was like,
Yeah.
I did
Yeah.
it. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't great. And then maybe a decade later, found it again and
Mm-hmm.
was at a different point in my life, stayed
Mm-hmm.
open minded, stayed curious, did it again, and suddenly it clicked. It resonated in a
Yeah.
very meaningful way. So
Yeah.
that's all to say. If you're listening, if you maybe give yoga a try again, or if you're
Yeah.
feeling frustrated or stuck,
Mm-hmm.
try something different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I second that. I hated yoga. And I do share this story a lot too. I mean, I was the runner, so I couldn't touch my toes. I could barely get to my knees. I would hide in the back of the class. And my like revelation with it was running on the track a few months later, and I thought somebody was like running up behind me, and it was my own feet kicking my ass. And I was like, it's pretty cool. My feet are kicking my ass. I'm kicking my own ass. And I couldn't figure out why that had never happened before. And I was like, it must be that weird yoga thing I've been doing. Something's releasing. So that was sort of
Yeah.
when I was like, well, maybe that yoga is kind of cool, but it was never for me. So I believed and, spent time doing it and then not doing it and then teaching it and then quitting teaching altogether. And now I really only teach in prison. Um, so
What a
yeah,
cool
that feels
sentence to
like
be
the
able to
place to
say.
be.
Yeah, I really only
I know
teach in
my
prison now.
my kids often change it to, "Oh, my mom's in prison." And later on when I'm talking to parents or, school administrators, they're like, have you served time?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I have some explaining to do." Not really. No.
May I present two off ramps that are a bit of a tangent that you might speak
Yeah.
to?
Let's go.
One, and you can say no at all times, as I said before we started recording, but I'm curious how you got from the young person who wasn't talking, who had eating disorders, etc. And it seems like you started running and now you're a yoga teacher, etc., very successful. I'm curious if there's a chapter in that life or that life story that we've skipped over of that little healing part. That's the first off ramp. If you choose your own adventure right now. The second one would be, how has your lived experience as a woman and being around so many women in the work that you do affected you as a mom who is raising young girls?
Wait, say that second one, Jeremy, just so I can really choose which one I want and
Yeah,
which one I
yeah, yeah.
don't want to answer.
So I'm curious how your life experience and your work experience with all of those women in prison and everything that you
Hmm,
teach, how has
hmm,
that affected the way that you mother your own daughters?
okay. I'm gonna
Or I
try
can
and
ask you
answer.
about, you're going
No
to go
more
both?
questions. I'm
Oh,
gonna
yeah.
try and answer both in one slot. Let's see.
Let's go.
Um, well, I think my mom dying at 10 and then having two children, and especially with all the eating disorders and running I did, I really didn't think I could have children. And so then when we got pregnant, I didn't have a period with both children. Um, and my acupuncturist years later was like, I can't believe you were able to get pregnant. I guess you were ovulating, you weren't menstruating. Amazing. So I had these two little girls, and I remember both of them were water births in the same tub. And when the first kid, Margot, who's 13 now, was born, I dropped her in the water and said, "Oh, God." And I just remember thinking, how am I supposed to raise this when I have not had a parent in my life that has been present? That was the first, oh shit, kind of in terms of parenting. And then the second being a girl too. I just remember thinking, this is so my mom here to be like, I'm here. And now figure out how to keep these two beings alive. And I remember coming home after having the second one and my husband Brian saying, "Okay, I'm going to work now." And I was like, I'm supposed to keep these two things alive and myself? You can't leave the house. I almost remember having this like panic feeling, Jeremy. And he looked at me and he was like, "Didn't you ever think that you would be left alone with two kids?" And I said, "No, it never occurred to me that I would be the responsible adult." Um, and in that, I mean, and I circle back to this prison for a moment, that woman who was serving a life sentence, whose family came to the show and said, "Do more of this work." She looked at me one day in the circle and said, "It's not a mistake that you're here, Nikki. You are so here because of your mom." And I just started weeping in the circle. And so I do believe that my mom is very much in these rooms. And I do believe that the women that I am interacting with daily in prison are teaching me how to parent. Because most of the time, parenting feels like the longest improvisation lesson I've ever been in. And I keep like looking at the bench, being like, where's my Who's going to sub me out? And that opportunity, as you know, as a parent, is not available. So, and every now and then I'm like, somebody should have created a manual. I didn't read very many parenting books, but I keep looking for one that might have all the answers. And really, it's a wild experiment. So I think that is true with how I parent, and it is often how I try to approach teaching, that I don't want to be the one in the room that has all the answers. I want to be the parent and the teacher that has more questions.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Did I answer both questions? Did I get it
Yeah,
right?
gold star, 10 out of 10. Yeah, yeah, it's really relatable.
Yeah.
And I look forward to reading that book that you find that has all the answers. And,
Yeah,
you
if
know,
you find it first, pass it on.
yeah, and, maybe that's a unifying theme for all of it, is just being okay here now with all of the uncertainty and all of the
Mm,
options and all of the
mhm,
unknowns and all of the inadequacies and all of the lack of A, B,
mhm,
and C, and
mhm.
continuing to just shove a red nose on your, or red clown nose on.
Yeah. I
Be like,
mean,
you
do
know
you
what?
have one? Like, do you have one nearby, or because you should get one.
What
You
would
should
be,
get one. Your daughter is going to want to see you in
uh,
this.
it'd be so incredible. I have deep regrets if that I couldn't just be like, actually, I have one in my pocket. I too carry around a clown nose.
I
I,
did have a funny moment with that clown nose, in that the Missouri Department of Corrections, I was emailing our caseworker our like supply list for our in-person workshops, and I wrote clown nose as the last thing on it. And she called me and she goes, Nikki, is this for real? You need this a clown nose?" And I was like, "Oh, it's very real. I definitely need that so that I can lead." She was like, "Okay, okay. Well, I'll ask our warden." And a day later, she called back and she was like, "The warden accepted everything but denied the clown nose." And I was like, "This is a good story. This is a good story."
yeah,
Yeah. Why did he have to deny the clown nose?
yeah. I need to interview that guy. What does he
Yeah,
need to
I'll
heal?
send you his email. I'm
Um,
sure he thinks we're nuts, but that's okay with me.
yeah. One other question I have would be, you don't strike me as a very argumentative individual, but
Mm,
um, but I'm curious about, what are things that you would be passionately in defense of, or that you would argue for, if you're having a conversation with a random person on the train or a family member in your life that says something about jail, women, poetry, whatever? Is there something that you would
mhm.
put a stake in the ground and be like, nope, I have to say something?
Yeah, I have a lot of unbridled rage that I've tried to do to do a bunch of therapy work on over the years, and theater is a good place to let it fly. But prison is often not, especially if you want to be let in the gate or the room. Um, Probably that we all deserve healing, and that especially people in prison, that prison is a great place to find healing. And I believe that there are a lot of people that think, no, it is the place for punishment, capital punishment. But I wish that there is more thought around prisons being a place where rehabilitation is possible. Because I think there are, and that is part of the work that I'm trying to do, but it is not the work that everyone is trying to do.
Yeah.
Probably that.
How common are programs like this in
Mm,
prisons? Like, does every prison
yeah.
have extracurricular activities where you can make pottery or do yoga or
Yeah,
garden?
some of them do. I think if more people were doing this work, we wouldn't be in as many states as we are. So that makes me believe that there aren't a lot of people doing this work. I have friends that run an organization called the Insight Alliance that offers really wonderful meditation work and a course inside and outside prison facilities. I have another friend that runs Open Hearts, Open Minds, and they do a ton of ukulele and theater in Oregon prisons, geared towards performance, but just also geared towards healing circles. So
Mm.
I think there are individuals and nonprofits doing this work, but as you started, sort of, it's a really interesting and funny little family business, and it's a strange little niche, you know. If I'm at the grocery store and somebody asks me how my day was, and I say, "Oh, I was just in prison teaching a class," it like ends a conversation. People don't really know where to go with it.
I
And then
would
I
know
think
where to go with it. It would not end my conversation.
well,
Like,
and I think some well, and you're curious, right, Jeremy? So some people it
yeah.
like opens their eyes, and I think there is a lot of curiosity around prison. Yeah, and that some people I think are really there to serve, and I think some people have an agenda that is more about them than about what is needed.
About them meaning that they feel egoically proud to be
Yeah,
serving the underprivileged or
I'm
something like that?
Yeah, I've sat in rooms where I've watched people hand out business cards and share messaging around, "I can save you, call me, email me, I'll help you
Oh.
get out." That is driven by their own agenda, I think.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I'm conscious of time, and I told you at the start that we would go for an hour, and
Mhm.
we're there. Uh,
Yeah.
so this is an opportunity for you to be like, I'm done talking to you, bro. It's been fun, but I gotta go feed my cat. Um,
Well, I don't have to pee and I don't have to feed the cat yet.
okay,
I will have to take kids to soccer in 20 minutes, but I'm happy to
okay.
talk for 19 more minutes.
Well, let's shoot for 5 and see how we go.
All right,
Um,
sounds good.
I was gonna ask. What was I gonna ask? Oh, I was gonna ask if you could share a story or two about something that has deeply affected you, or when you think about your work in prisons and all of the
Oh,
people and all of the stories, is there one that stands out where you just think that is now a part of my bone marrow and I'll never forget that? And, um, hallelujah, amen, thank you for that experience.
yeah, I think about Mandy, who is the woman that I've brought up a few times during this conversation, who was serving life. She passed away last year, actually, in her cell. And she is the one who said to me, "Your mom is in this room. That is why you are here." It was also her family, her sister, her mom and dad, and her sister's kid that came to see the performance that she was in. She was a classically trained pianist, and when we first met about 7 years ago, she said, "I love this class. I would love to be in every performance, but I don't know if you know what I've done, Nikki. You just can't put my name on any of the paperwork that goes out to the public because people will come to the performance for the wrong reasons." And I had never looked up her crime, Jeremy. For me, that is like a lot of my staff do look up people's crimes, but for me, maybe call it naive, but for me, it keeps me from judging somebody for what they've done. But I
Hmm.
think about her often because I knew her for many years before I knew what she had done. And after she passed away, I looked up her crime, and she was in for life for throwing her two kids off a bridge here in Oregon. And one of them died on impact, was 4 years old, and the other one was 7 or 8 years old and survived. And during her time in prison, they rebuilt this relationship together. Um, and I remember when I learned that she had passed away in her cell, I started crying and I sort of thought, man, what she did was not the woman that was in my room. The woman that was in my room over these 6 years played piano, wrote beautiful poetry, wrote these stories, was an avid listener. Um, never took up space without being asked to take up space. And I knew she had done this horrible thing, but I thought, I hope her family knows the other version of who she was. And I had only ever met them that one time. And so I reached out to the caseworker and asked the caseworker if he would share an email of her family's. And I had this beautiful back and forth with her parents. And I said, I'm going to write you a letter, and I have 6 years of her work, and I would love to send you all of her handwritten work. So I dug through, poetry and artwork, and I took pictures of it all because I didn't want to lose it completely. But it felt like a real gift for me to be able to offer her family, hopefully, something that was healing,
Mm,
from the journey that I knew her as while she was, serving time.
yeah, thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Dang. How can we support you? And where can we find more of you? I know you have a website.
Yeah, we have an awful website that we're having revamped and remade. But you can find our website on the inside dot space. It'll change and be a little more user friendly soon, I hope. You can find us on Instagram, on the inside too, I think it is, or on the inside. Um, you can join. We lead a 4-class series on the outside 4 times a year, which gives you access to women that are serving time in other facilities. You co-create work alongside them. We share work that you make with them, and they share work with you. It gives you really a backbone and a taste of what we do when we're working inside prison facilities. It's led by women with lived experience of the system. It's a great way. And then we also offer workshops in person and virtually. About 4 times a year is what we're experimenting with right now. So we just led a community yoga class, and we've got a mother-child event coming up in December that'll be art making for women that are serving time, and then also cards for family members that are on the outs. So
Amazing. And that's all online or that's in real life?
yeah, both the mother-child art making event will be in person, but we'll also offer a sort of Zoom card making if you want to make cards for our students that are serving time. We make holiday cards every year and send them to all the prison facilities we work within.
So cool. Well, I've enjoyed this tremendously, and I've been
Me
so impressed
too.
by you and just very grateful that you said yes to the random guy on the internet that wanted to talk to you. And also
Yeah, me
just so
too.
admire your work and who you are and
Mm,
what you do. It's like it's very uplifting, and it gives me hope for
mm,
the future. You know, there's obviously a lot going on in the world, and I think to talk to people like you who are doing things like this is just a really powerful, inspiring reminder. It's like, hey, there's
mm,
like some good humans out there doing good stuff, and please stay in touch. If I can support or share or promote,
yeah.
I would love to help you out when
Thank
uh
you, Jeremy.
when you get up to Canada. I'd love to
I know I
love
need
to
to come
take you
up
for
there
tea.
and go for a run with your partner.
Yeah, we just did a big race actually, the Squamish 50 it's
Woohoo!
called. And
Whoa,
sh
50K or miles or
she did 50K, I did
awesome.
23K, and my sister did
Awesome.
50 miles. Yeah. But
Wow,
it's an annual
beautiful.
event. So if you want to come up,
Okay. Okay. It sounds
it's
like it's
beautiful.
in July or August
It's
then?
in August. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All
So you're
right.
still a runner
How's
then.
I'm still a runner. Still a
Okay.
runner.
Yeah. I mean, I did the 23, so it's doable.
Okay. All right. That
Yeah.
sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you so much for just bringing light to the conversation too, and your curiosity and interest and questions. Yeah, it means a lot.
Absolutely, Nikki.
Yeah.
I'll put links in the show notes to those listening and and go find Nikki's work. Make some
Hmm.
cards, follow her online on Instagram, and thank you again. I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Take care.
I mean, how good was that conversation with Nikki Weaver? Uh, whoa. As suggested, she has a website called On the Inside. There are ways to get involved. There are ways to follow up. There are things to read and do and consider. I mean, primarily including answering the question, can you speak your truth and survive it? Hoo-wee! I hope you enjoyed that chat about creative connection, about all of the work that she's doing in prisons with women, and the ideas around compassion and respect and acceptance that she shared. Those are big words and big ideas that we can all implement a little bit more and a little bit better, I think, personally. Anyway, thanks for being here. Thanks for all you do to spread some kindness and compassion in the world and in yourself. I appreciate you. I love you. I'm proud of you. Keep going. You're doing good. And thanks for being here. I will talk to you soon.